Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, film culture critic and journalist Carolyn Hines, and this is the YouTube channel / podcast where I speak to film creatives around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today I'm very happy to be joined by writer, director, and producer Benny Chen to talk about his latest short film, Hand, which screened at the Cleveland International Film Festival, amongst others. And this is a very interesting short film because it's about an immigrant, Lin Xiang, and he has been living in the United States for roughly 20 years, but he's been working as an undocumented immigrant. And this is a film about how people that are invisible to the world are very cognizant of how the world sees them. You know, like he's invisible to people, but he sees everyone. And the film is set around in spring of 2022. So this was during the time when Asian Americans were still being very much targeted and discriminated against and facing violence from people who are racist for attacking them and blaming them for the COVID pandemic, which we know was not true. But it was a way for people to take out there's xenophobia and there's xenophobia on Asians and particularly East Asians. Not that they even knew the difference between Chinese, Taiwanese, Hong Kong, Japanese, Korean. They didn't know. But the film really talks about that, and especially from the perspective of this man, Lin, and we'll get into that, of course. But first of all, thank you for joining me today, Benny.
Hi guys, thank you for having me, Carolyn. It's my pleasure to be here talking to you.
Thank you for joining me. And first of all, congratulations on showing the film at the festival. I always tell people it is not easy to get a film to be showing at any film festival. So any film festival you get into is always a big achievement in my book. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was really a surreal experience to be in Cleveland for the first time.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell to me a bit about how you became involved in filmmaking. What drew you to becoming a director and a writer?
So I watched movie growing up as a kid, because my parents are pretty busy at work when I was growing up. So I was often watching anime, TV show, movies growing up. But before college, I didn't really thought about it. And in college, I stopped taking all kind of different classes, and took one film classes, and I really liked it. And I was taking film animation because I'm trying different things out, but animation I couldn't really draw.
I was going to ask if you could draw.
I mean, I can draw, but like one class is like 5 hours, and I just draw. Everybody like don't talk, and you just draw and draw and draw. I was like, okay, I don't think I can do this. And then I took one film classes, and then I really enjoy it, and then I like the creating process, and my professor kind of lied me to tell me that, oh, you have talent, you should do it, and then it tricked me into it, and I've been doing it ever since. And I went to film school, and I really like. I was to say I really like the power of bringing my imagination into reality. So I stuck with directing and producing and writing ever since. This is my, I guess, department. So yeah.
I want to talk about the animating a bit, because the thing with animate, like what you were talking about, like you're sitting in a room and you're drawing like for 5 hours on end. And like for animation, like it's like anime, for instance, most anime artists, they're like, when they're drawing their manga, it's just them. And then they might have like a couple assistants, but you're just in complete silence and isolation. Whereas for a for filmmaking, you're on a set surrounded by people. Is that the thing that you like? You like being surrounded by people because that kind of like drives you creatively?
I will say I do enjoy a piece of creating. Like for me, like writing, when I'm writing alone, I'm in a quiet space. But I would just say I wasn't probably not very good at drawing to begin with. And but yeah, on production, to be surrounded by many creatives, I think is very exciting, and the very collaborative process of creating is one of the part that drew me into live action. But at the same time, one day, still my goal to direct animation film eventually. So I'm pretty open to it. It's still my dream to direct animation film in the future.
Oh, really? What type of animation are you into? Like, is it particular animation style, a particular type of anime?
I really like traditional and 2D, and my animation process. So like, from my understanding, at least my school was you started from classical and 2D and 3D, and classical is the hand draw one, and I took a classical one, and I couldn't really move on anymore. But eventually I would say my favorite is traditional hand draw and 2Ds, like Japanese Studio Ghibli and the kind of stuff. And yeah, it's more like what I grew up with. But I really like 3D too. But I think Arcane, the Netflix
Yeah, Arcane,
so,
yeah.
like if I ever do like combination of 2D or 3D will be something like Arcane. But I think Arcane also have traditional true, like it's a combination of every kind of animations. It's something that I want to be involved in the future if I ever got a chance with. But I probably have to master my storyboard skill better.
Probably that might be best first. You know, Arcane is interesting because Arcane. I haven't seen the latest season of it, but I did watch the first season, and it was really really well done. It was really for a Netflix production anyway. It was considered really innovative because Arcane came after the Love, Death and Robots series, and they had a few other animation projects in that series. No, all of them are animated, but there were different styles. But Arcane was really interesting because how Arcane they blended the music with the animation style. Like everyone knew like the theme song was by Imagine Dragons, you know, last song, but like I really liked how they matched the themes of the music to the animation. And so like I really love that. And I've been really into anime recently. Like me and my friends, we started a podcast to talk about anime. So like to hear you say like you like anime, but you were like, I'm not getting enough of a draw to pursue it. So I'm gonna do filmmaking. But talk to me about these having that decision you're gonna do move into filmmaking, traditional filmmaking. And what was it when you first began studying filmmaking? What was the biggest lesson you had to learn? Like, you know, you may have had this idea about filmmaking, and then once you started doing the classes at the school and everything, you realized this is not what I thought it was. What was the one lesson that you learned that you were like, I had no expectation?
I would said probably the being on set for 12 hours a day sometimes, especially independent or when you first started out. It's very one thing that I didn't imagine is to like the process of creating is really fun, but the process of preparing, like prepping your crew, your founding, location, logistic part doesn't feel like creating, but it's very important to like get this straight. Um, Another thing I would say is the style of filmmaking and structure, because I went to film school in the United States, and most of the film school in US they tend to teach you the classic narrative of Hollywood style. You know, the classic 3/8, and then you move forward the story with event, incident. But once you begin your filmmaking journey, you watch more film, European film, Asian film, you realize there's a art house film existing, and film can be very free. It doesn't have to follow the classic structure. It doesn't have to have a purpose. Like the every characters doesn't need to have a big I guess motivation or something they have to accomplish. It can be emotion. It can be just anything. And I would say the hardest part is to embrace the world, and because you're very familiar with the classical Hollywood structure, then you are kind of limited in terms of creating. So right now, for me, this film is for me to explore this direction.
Yeah, because we'll talk a bit about that because that's interesting. But yeah, like for a lot of people don't realize that for films, even for short films, like you spend hours and hours on set just setting up before you even call action. You have to you have to work with the cinematographers, with the lighting technicians, with the sound technicians, the costume and props, and all of these different areas of making a film to just get one shot set up, and like it's hours, and that's why film is considered a discipline, like you have to have discipline, and there's all these different things that you have to do, and for you as the writer and director, you are responsible for all of this. What was it like for you learning the responsibility of being in charge of an entire set?
Oh, it's stress. Another thing that I want to, I guess, add it to the question you asked before was the difficult part is that to make sure, because you don't want to be one of the director to be like, yeah, just believe in me, just trust me, we did everything that I said. Because like you have to, I guess, let other people understand or convince them your vision, and sometimes you argue a lot. Like with my producer, I mean, now debate. I would say debate, not argue. Debate with my producer, debate with my cinematographer and production designer of the direction we're trying to go for, like visual style, visual language. You just have to really be patient, and because for me, film is both objective and subjective, if that makes sense. Like beauty is subjective, but for me, art have at least film have a most basic objective way of judging how this film is. But people come on different beauty journey or art journey, and they have different standard, and it just process to actually make sure everyone it's aligned with your vision.
And how do you go about doing that? Because like for your instance, your you mentioned that your producer is Yanghuixiao Gao, and your cinematographer is Miki Inoguchi, and your editor is Anny Dai. And like talk to me about just like working with them and like forming your team and discussing what your vision is, again, because like one part of making a film is you have an entire production crew, all these different sets, but before you even get to set, you have to get to the table. You're discussing the story with them, and you're discussing your vision, and you're trying to explain this idea that you wrote it out, but you still have to explain it visually in a way that they can picture what you're picturing, so that they can see your vision. So talk to me about working with your producers and your editors and cinematographers and getting them to understand your vision.
Yeah, for sure. It's very interesting that this film is technically my first film outside of film school, but when I was making it, I was still in film school. So I was making it independently. I went to 2 film school, one in Santa Barbara City College, and then after that I transferred to California State University. But Miki and I met in Santa Barbara, my first film school, and we did my very first short also in my film student career, Sunshine and Rain. And we got into Santa Barbara International, but we know each other for a long time. So for me to convince him to do the project with me is much easier than other people because he know me and then we worked together before. I guess we share some familiar view of art in some way, but at the same time, Mickey is very trained in Hollywood. Like when I was making this film, I went back to school, but he's already working in the industry. He working on music video. He working on famous artist stuff. And for me to convince him, I really have to prep the references, cinematography, mood board, and really go through. One thing is just that I have to explain to him that this story is not really made to win a festival, if it makes sense. Like it's more of my, I guess, a creation, like for people to give a voice. But I mean, ideally we want to win, but at the same time, I don't really want to find in the formula. But he eventually understands and he want to be part of it, which is very lucky of me. And Gao Yang, we met through a friend because at the time when I was making the film, I was still young. I was like 24, but she was a much more experienced filmmaker than me. She was working in a commercial company, and she got Oscar qualifier and bathtub qualifier many before me. So we really have to sit down and go through the script and tell her my motivation behind it. Like how we really don't want to take advantage of these people. Like we have to interview them, we have to get to know them, and and eventually she think this is a meaningful story to tell, and she's and she want to be part of it. Yeah, because we didn't really have a lot of budget to begin with to pay a lot of people. It's like some crews are volunteer worker, so which I'm very grateful. But yeah.
And for Gao, because I looked up a little bit, so like she works with C318, which is a production company that works both in US and internationally in Asia. I want you to talk a bit about getting her on board. Like, what is the process like for, especially because you were a student at the time of writing the film and making the film. Like, what was the process of getting a producer like her on board, and how do you like you knew Mickey because you were able to get Mickey because you knew Mickey? and like he already had a sense of idea of like who you are as a filmmaker and an artist. But what was it like getting Gao Young and like and her company on board?
So her company wasn't really part of the film. It's a like outside work. Like he chose to be on it. It's a
Okay.
freelance work, but at the same time, she's still working in the company. So I'm very grateful that she able to make time on the weekends and stuff. But Gaoyang's a friend of friend, and when I was developing this project, I began to look for producer, and I was asking around like, do you guys know any young producer that's interested in independent project, but probably not too experienced because I don't think I can afford someone who's experienced and stuff. So we're looking for someone like who's good but still early in the career. And for me to talk her into it, I just kind of have to show her my past work. But my past work is kind of Hollywood standard, kind of a narrative structure, and so I have to tell her my preparation for this project, my shot list, my references, like how different I'm gonna do it this time. And eventually, she after a few meetings, she said yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. And what was it like getting funding? Because again, you're a student, that you're like you don't have a whole ton of money, and it is an independent short film. And this is something that I talk a lot about with people online. Like for instance, there is an article that was published. I think it was a Hollywood Reporter, and it was talking about this Canadian film called Blue Heron. And like they were saying, it talked about like the telefilm grants and all these grants that artists here in Canada can get. And people were like, oh, maybe we should move to Canada because it seems like artists in Canada have it made. And me and other people are like saying, hold your horses. Don't go packing up your bags to move up here because yes, we have like government grants and a lot of arts grants, but it can be very difficult to get these grants. It can be, and many times you need multiple grants even just for a short film. Getting funding for a film in general is extremely difficult. So for you, what was it like getting funding? And how, and like you said, some of the crew and everyone like they volunteer their time, which is amazing because there are a lot of people who do volunteer on films because they want the experience of being on a film set, they want the experience of being in a film, and it goes towards their CV, especially if they're like students in film school and in acting school. But what was the process of you getting funding?
It's mostly my saving. To be 100% honest with you, but I would tell you that the US is unlike Europe or Asia. The government funding or the film grants is very rare and very competitive. I would say that even with filmmaking, the United States still operate in a very capitalism way.
Yeah.
So especially after the new government, a lot of fund for arts have been cut, and a lot of cultural diversity projects been cut. So to be realistic speaking, there is fund, Sundance Lab, all these nonprofit fund, but at the same time you're competing with the whole United States, much bigger population. So it's very competitive. And like I have a friend who's in Europe, and he says it's much easier for them to get funded with the government. They don't really have much limitation of how many people can apply and how many people can get it. But in the US, only very few, maybe 10, maybe 5 for one grant for Sundance or everything else. So for the US filmmaker, like often when you first started, you kind of have to put into your own money. The first 2 or 3 short film, a bit like after starting getting the Oscar qualifier nominated, and then maybe you have higher chances of getting winning the grant, or have a producer they are familiar with the grant system to help you to get some grant. Because for short film, it's really hard to gain profit back.
Yeah.
It's more like you're building your portfolio in some way. So for young filmmaker, I would say that your first 3 film probably have to put your own money, and the first 3 film probably in some way have to be recognized by Oscar qualified film festival, or on YouTube is a hit in some way, and started getting more. And at the same time, you are mastering your craft. You're getting better with your directing, your visual story language. maybe like this is my next step to find a producer to be more familiar with the grants and understand the found and grant system and break into it.
Yeah, and the thing is that like for and you understanding how difficult it is to get grants and how difficult it is to get the funding and get into the system and everything. That's why it's interesting that you yourself said that you entered the film festivals not necessarily to win, but just to have the film seen and have that experience. And I think that's very important. And that's something that I also speak to a lot of filmmakers about as well. I always say some like and not just to filmmakers, but this is just my view as a film critic and just as a fan of films. I also for me, I would say getting into the industry and entering festivals and everything just with the objective to win, I'm like, isn't that kind of defeating the purpose of the art? Like the objective should be to get the film seen, to get the films as seen by audiences, people to watch these films and think about the stories that you're showing, and to relate to stories like a film about Han, a film like Han is about immigrants. It's about you making a film to get people to see what immigrants experience in America, what Asian immigrants, especially in 2022, 2021, 23, even up to now are experiencing in America, So like to hear you say that your objective is not to win, I'm very happy to actually hear you say that, because that's something I try to get people to think. And it comes on especially around like award season, as we call it, where people say, oh my gosh, a film comes out and the first thing that people start talking about is if it's an Oscar qualifying film. I'm like, that should not be the objective. Why is that the objective? That you haven't even seen it. You see a trailer and you're like, that's going to be an Oscar winner. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but one thing I want to add is that I like to make it not to win, but at the same time, it's like, the industry is very tough right now. And like for young filmmakers to break in, they kind of have to get these names, get these nomination selections, which is very, I guess, sad in some way. Like for me, like I'm still pulling between like, oh, I should have gotten more selection, but at the same time, I didn't make it to win. Like this is very controversy, internal conflict.
Because I can imagine like you going to like a Sundance or any of these other festivals saying, they'll be like, "Kid, talk to me about your film." It's like, well, I made the film and I put it here, not necessarily to win, but just because of people like, why would you enter a festival if your objective isn't to win awards? And you're like, and so I can understand why that would be controversial. And if for you, it would be kind of just like, how do I feel about this? And I think that's the struggle of artists, that's the struggle of filmmakers, like some people paint a painting and they put it just there for themselves to see. Some people put a painting and they'll put it in a museum for it to be seen by people at the museum. People now, we have social media. People paint things for content. For content on YouTube, on TikTok, or all these other platforms, and they're getting money from it because like their platform or whatever is monetized. But sometimes you're painting just to show people like this is how you paint. Like there's all of these objectives that people have of art, and that's what I love about filmmaking and art in general. Like we as human beings, we have so many motivations. Like there's so many ways and things that we relate to films and to art, and we can say, this is my goal and my objective. But if this other thing happens, cool as well. Getting an award, that'd be extra bonus. And you're like, that's extra bonus, and it comes in handy for my resume as well.
I would say that there is a mainstream festival popular of film existing, like the Formula, and a lot of filmmakers is facing the dilemma of making their own stuff or doing the Formula, if it makes sense. So it's a very, I guess, the process every artist have to go through it. Is this your job or this is your creation?
Yeah. And that's another thing that people don't realize with festivals. Different festivals actually do have preferences for the types of films that they'll show, and a lot of people don't realize that. So when you say like there is technically a formula, like people like there when you watch, if you attend enough festivals, you realize that there's a pattern in the types of films they like. Like TIFF.
Like every one of them have it.
Right, they have very particular. You're like, oh, this looks like a Sundance film, and you may not be able to explain exactly why, but you get like this sensibility of say, this is what the Sundance jurors like. If you go to enough TIFF festivals, you look at a film and say, this looks like a film that TIFF would show. You know, if you go to like, for me, I cover like a lot of Asian festivals, and like I can sometimes pinpoint a film and say, this film looks like it was show well at Jeonju. This film looks like it was show well at Busan. This film looks like it was show well at like, you know, shorts in Asia. And in saying that, I find like for me, from my experience so far, I do want to start covering more like Latin American festivals and stuff. But for me, what I think is interesting is I find Asian festivals are much more open to experimental films and than North American film festivals. Like I find they're open to so much more like unconventional films that you were talking about. We'll talk a bit about this now about the Hollywood formula. You know, about how Hollywood has a very specific way that they like stories to be told. Even the art house films, there's still a way to tell the film. Like your film, when film had started, I'm like, it's not a linear film for one. It doesn't open with a linear storyline. It doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It kind of starts at 5, then jumps to 1 and goes back to 2, and like the timeline isn't thing. So talk to me about that, you know, about making the choice to say, I don't want to necessarily stick with the formula that is kind of like Hollywood. I want to kind of stick to my own kind of creative identity as a filmmaker.
For me, that part's more on the visual storytelling, like the shot we chose, like a long shot or close up. But your question for non-linear and linear, when we were testing, because we know that you'll be against what I just said, but my producer is concerned about how the film will do in the festivals. So she and the other producer want to find a way of, like, I guess, the most efficient way, because the first cut was 40 minutes, and no show film is gonna be streamed at 40 minutes in any festivals. So we have to
That's
find
a mid-length film.
yeah. So we cut it to right now, and then we try in different way, like linear and non-linear. And for linear, we got some feedback of how it was kind of slow if we didn't put the non-linear in the beginning. I guess this is how it was better review this way, I guess, like from the audience, like feedback, like non-linear will caught attention more, and then to avoid the too slow in the beginning for the linear story.
Yeah, and that kind of makes sense because the film is centered on Lin, and Lin is a very insular character. You know, he is the film. First of all, the film has it's just Lin, and the camera and the film follows him. You know, and like because he's so much in his head a lot of the time, the film it doesn't feel slow, but it really tells you like where he is, and he feels like he's just moving through life. You know, I made the notes to say he's a person just moving through the motions. His life is routine. You know, he gets up at 7:30 on the dot every single day. He gets his breakfast. He goes to the restaurant where he works. He goes through everything that's happening in the restaurant. End of the day, he gets on his bicycle and he returns home. So you needed a way to break up that monotony. And I think and the way where the film begins, it's with an action of violence was a way to do that. So talk to me about choosing that particular moment as the way to break up the rhythm of the film. You're like, because there's other scenes that you could have maybe used at the beginning, but you use that particular moment where unfortunately Lynn is getting struck with a bottle, and that's where the film opens up. Talk to me about making that particular choice. Was there a discussion that you had by maybe thinking maybe this is a bit too jarring of a way to open the film, or was there like a discussion about maybe choosing another scene to open it?
In the discussion, we only had two option: is the original linear way and this scene. Because people, everyone in my team think this scene is more visually powerful, and this thing they will make people want to understand what this is about. And like right now, we might cut another shorter version for festival if it didn't do well this year, but we think to keep the 20-minute structure, this is the best way for people to get interested to watch it. Because for short film 24, it's quite long, or 23, it's quite long. So we think this is the most, I guess, intriguing way. Like people be like, "Oh, what happened? Like, is this past? Is this now? Or is this, yeah."
Yeah. And that's an interesting choice, and I think it's a good choice. Keep it at the 20 minutes, because in thinking about it, I'm like, what scenes would you cut out that I can't think of any other. Is there any scenes in particular? And I can't think of any scenes in particular because I think the scenes that you do keep are really important to showing us what's happening around Lin. And the thing is like Lin is like he's working in this kitchen, and one of the opening sequences is very interesting as well. Is he's working in the chicken and it's the chicken. He's working in the kitchen, and they're talking and they're talking about the meals. You know, like there's a difference between compound. I
haven't had lunch yet.
Me either. And not too long ate it. I had a late breakfast. I had a chicken breast sandwich. But and it was a sandwich my sister brought all the way from Barbados for me. I said, like, if you're coming back, you have 3 things to bring home for me, and one of them is a chicken breast sandwich from Chefette. But I digress. But the scene that they're talking about these, and it may seem like a mundane or may seem innocuous, but I think it's actually a very important scene. And he's the chef, and like they're talking about the difference between Kung Pao chicken and Mongolian chicken, and like the scenes, and their chefs are talking about how they can't figure out why Americans like this particular dish so sweet because it's traditionally not known as being sweet, you know. And like the waitress comes in and she's like, and she says, "Well, you sent me the wrong dish. You sent me the American version of the dish, but the people that we have are Chinese, so they know the difference." And talk to me about that, because I thought like a lot of people might miss. I really thought that scene was actually very important because it shows you like for Asian Americans and for Asian immigrants in America. And I think in Europe, it would be, I could see the same thing happening in Europe, where like there are these discussions that are being had in kitchens about how you are making a traditional dish in a Chinese restaurant, but you're making it for an American palate, more specifically a white American palate, you know. And like that scene is already showing us a struggle that Lin is having amongst his own community. You know, he as an immigrant, he's still trying to fit in this space where he should feel comfortable, you know, but he doesn't feel comfortable because the chef is like, you're always making mistakes and stuff. And it's like, he's been working there for 15 years. If he was always making mistakes, he would have been fired a long time ago. But I got the sense that this is a line that is thrown out as a way to kind of keep him off balance because he's an undocumented immigrant and he knows he can't risk losing a job. And this is a line that I imagine like an employer would keep saying to an employee, just to keep reminding them, like, I have this power over you. I can destroy your life just like that with one discussion, with one arbitrary decision. Talk about that, because to me, that's one of my favorite scenes in the film, because it really does show all of these little discussions and all these little stresses that people like Lin have to go through. But it's also like just the discussion between immigrants and people of color and like Asian and people and ethnic people living in America. Like, you have to adapt so much of yourself to fit into in American society?
That's a great question. For us, it's like a lot of restaurants from Asia have to adapt the flavor of American people, you know, sweeter, not as spicy. And I think it's really interesting to, I guess, to suggest or like simplifies how it is for them to lose part of themselves but still be themselves at the same time, to blend into American culture. Like when I was doing field research, interview them, a lot of them are working long hours and then go home and go to work and they want to blend into the American culture, but they are tired all the time. But at the same time, they are invisible to the American society. For me, it's very, I guess, sad in some way. You can see this in the restaurant environment. We have 2 sets of menu. You know, the American one, the Chinese one, which reflect to their identity, who they're trying to be in the society and who they really are. But if they couldn't really find a good balance, they can not be both. Like for him, is he American? If he can really speak English that well, and you know his environment's only here in the restaurant and work, like people will think that he didn't really do any effort to blend into the culture whatsoever. But at the same time, they don't really see him in the back of the kitchen, all the labor he put in, and then like undeniable, the Chinese restaurant is part of American culture with the fortune cookie, the to-go boxes, chow mein, fried rice, blah blah blah. So that thing is our way to trying to say that in a more low-key version. Yes. So I hope that answers your question, the first part.
No, it does, and it's something that I think people who are not immigrants, especially who are not immigrants who don't speak English, or I should say, who are immigrants but they speak English. Like for me, I'm an immigrant to Canada, but my first language and my only language that I speak fluently is English. So there's a lot that I had to learn to adapt to living here in Canada, but something that I didn't have to learn to adapt was learning English because I already knew English. It's my first language coming from the Caribbean. But what people who especially if they don't hang around people who speak another language is that and especially here in Canada, they call it ESL, English as a second language. And if you don't hang around people who have English as a second or third or even fourth language, is that the only way you can learn the English is if you get to hang around people who do speak English. But for a lot of immigrants, when they immigrate to Europe or to North America or even to other Asian countries or wherever, if you are working so many long hours, like Lynn, he works morning to night in the kitchen, and he's surrounded by, and he's working in this kitchen. So he's the only people he interacts with are people who speak Mandarin, people who already speak his language, and he doesn't get to do that outside, as you're saying. And so the only times he gets to do is if he goes to like the cafe. He goes to the cafe and he's learning the book. He has the book at home and he's reading. And so when he goes to the cafe, he's so excited to try to like order in English, but he doesn't have the correct pronunciation because he doesn't speak it often enough to become comfortable in speaking it, and that's something that people don't understand. You can learn a language, you can have the book knowledge, but unless you have the speaking ability, a chance to speak it, you can't really learn it. There were times I tried learning I've taken classes in Mandarin, Japanese, and in Korean, but like if I don't have anyone to talk with, you feel nervous speaking it, right? You're like, I want to make sure I sound right. So when I saw him doing that scene in the cafe, I'm like, I've been there. When I went to Korea, I was like, I know exactly what I want to say. And then I end up ordering in English because I feel so self-conscious ordering in Korean, right? And so for him, it was that. And like, people don't understand that. They'll judge you and say, oh, you've been here so long and you didn't take the time to learn. And like, not that they didn't take the time to learn, they had no one to talk with. They had no one who would take the patience and the time to learn with them. And people say, oh, go to classes. Classes are expensive. Okay. Classes are very expensive. And I want you to talk a bit about that, about making sure that you put those kind of scenes in the film, putting these scenes of showing how important it was to you to show Lynn putting in the effort to learning, because he's tired. He has such little time to himself, but the times that he does have to himself, he's learning. He has his study book open and he's taking notes and he's repeating to himself. And so talk to me about how important that was to show him putting in that effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that to show that they are putting effort to blend into the culture, just, many of us trying to blend into the culture. You don't want to be in a world that you don't feel any connection to it. You don't want to be handicapped. And just that in reality, a lot of them doesn't have the money or the resources to perfect the language, but it's also still true that they try and their best, with the circumstances they have to blend in. And I think it's very important to show that because a lot of misunderstandings that the immigrant doesn't really learn the language and they stay in the community and don't want to be part of the country. For me, it's not true. And I've seen many people trying. I mean, some people probably don't try, but at the same time, some people do try. Yeah. And I think it's very important to acknowledge those people who try.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that sometimes it's not people don't understand English. They understand it very well, but they can't speak it because English is just a really difficult language to learn, especially like if you're coming from a language where the grammatical rules are completely opposite to English. Like our grammatical rules are completely different to like Korean grammatical rules, Japanese, like Arabic. It's all very difficult. So that's why I always tell people, whenever I interview people who speak other language, I always tell them, don't ever apologize. Don't ever apologize for making a mistake or for being unsure, because like you're learning a completely new way to communicate, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and it's very difficult. And then there's many people who are trilingual, or polyglots, because you have your language and different dialects, right? They speak different dialects, but then you have like North Americans, and I'm including Canadians, so they'd be like, oh, like you don't think, I'm like, can you speak 3 languages? This person is speaking at least 2 different dialects, and you don't even know there's like English is their 4th language. What are you talking about? right? But
I have a friend who's Italian. He speak perfect Mandarins and English and Italian. I was like, damn, that's crazy.
those people make my brain hurt. I'm like, kudos to you. I
Uh,
tried learning all
I
of
mean,
the
yeah, I'm trying to learn Korean right now, but I haven't been making much progress.
read it, but I can read it, but I can't really speak it as fluently as I would like to because I don't have again no one to practice with, but also like I'm a visual and auditory learner, right? I need to be there to and be
Mm.
conversing with people regularly to
I
get
feel
it.
like if I live in Korea for like 6 months, I'll probably master it.
I
But
get it, right? Like Korean is English. It is easy to read. I love reading Hangul. Like, it's the easiest language
mm,
to read because like I'm dyslexic. So I'm like, thank you, King Sejong. You made this for me. I wanted now to talk a bit about so something that happens in the film that I was not expecting, and I'll tell you two things actually that kind of like made my heart jump a bit. There's the scene where Lin gets attacked, and he's attacked by this man. He's coming out the cafe, and he's attacked by this man who blames him for the COVID pandemic. You know, because at the beginning, like there was all of this propaganda that was spread saying that it came out of China, and that it's they call people are calling it the Chinese virus, and it was just just a demonstration of how white supremacy uses people's racial and ethnic identity to weaponize things against us. And that sequence was very much about that. You know, it was about the people that were being attacked in America. They happened in a few other countries, like in a few times in Europe and here in Canada, but most of the attacks happened in the US. And that sequence was, I'll admit to you, it was a bit hard for me to watch. I actually had to pause and skip a little bit, and then I had to go back and watch it again because I'm like, no, this scene is kind of like a testimony. So I'm like, I can't skip it. So, but it was hard for me because I was like, Lynn is just there walking out. You know, it was a very happy moment because he saw this lady put on her mask and he's like immediately clocked, oh, she did it because I'm Chinese, and then he's at the counter and he has this experience where they give him like a free cookie, and he's like, people are really kind to me. So he's very happy to have had this very kind moment. And out of nowhere, this man hits him with the bottle, and it just was so violent. And it was just like, that was hard for me, but it was just like, but this is the reality, right? Talk to me about that. And in working with your actor, your actor's name was Zhan Wang. Talk to me about casting and working with him for this scene, you know, but like how did the two of you and the crew and the cast work through this scene? Because I'm always very curious with filmmakers of especially of ethnic identity who have to kind of have these kind of sequences that very much talks about racism and how violent racism can be. And I'm always like, how do you just like work your way through that in the scene, you know, before, the during, and the after?
yes, this is a big question. That's a good question too. But for me, every I guess actions or attack or conflict usually occur from misunderstanding or ignorance and lack of knowledge. And it is true, a lot of people lose their job in COVID. The working class, blue collar, and at the same time, they are the group of people that is happening not to go through too much, I guess, proper knowledge or news or education. So they are at the same time very easy influential group. And for me, in my filmmaking journey, I try not to flat any characters as possible. So I when I watch the news, I'm not trying to justify the action, but I want to see where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Like what motivated them to do such horrible acts is like what desperation they have to put their anger on other people. So it is very tragic that the government at the time was misleading or the media was misleading, and many people have doesn't really understand the bigger pictures of how the thing really is. I think it's important to show that because they are victim, but also the aggressive, shall we say, at the same time. I wish I give branding more sense, but we don't really have the time, budget to do it. But anyway, yeah, I think it's very important to show it. I'm not trying to justify any of the action because I think it's wrong, but at the same time, to understand where this is coming from and how we can avoid it in the future, like fear come from lack of knowledge always. To work with Zhan and Darin is that we really have to sit together and talk about it. Like, this, how important it is to show how real war is, because people don't really think, because people think Asian are model minority. Like, we all often work in higher educated job, we get paid a lot. We don't, but it's at the same time, if you look at the statistic, a lot of Asian people are living in poverty on the line of poverty, and when we feel injustice in our culture, we tend to not really fight back. Like, we would talk growing up. Like, my mom, when I first moved to the US, my mom would be like, "Oh, avoid the trouble. Just you don't want to cause any scenes." But I don't think that will help in long way, because people will think, "Oh yeah, you're just gonna suck it in, and you don't have it any rough because you don't say anything about it." I think it's important for people to acknowledge that every race or every ethnicity could encounter injustice or prejudice in some way. So for me to film this, and this is the purpose of it. And with Zhan, with Darin, we have to rehearse many times and make sure, even before the casting process, the actress was informed this film have racial attack, have racial slur, and they have to be okay with it. Like, we have some, like we call back some audition for Randy's characters, the attacker, and some actor will be like, "We are not like that. This is that we don't do that." But I was like, "But you see that on the news, So yeah, it was I guess tough or uncomfortable process in some way, but at the same time, I'm proud of my crew to actually say the uncomfortable story.
Yeah, no, and I think that's important because because the thing is about the film, about Han, I think it's about showing like all of these different ways that immigrants and Chinese immigrants and and minorities in America are treated, or disenfranchised. Like, we talked about how they like learning to adapt even within your own space, like in a kitchen, adapting your own food for American palate. That's one way. Learning another language to be able to fit in, because this is your new home. This is a home that you've been in for 20 years, but you're still feeling unsure and uncomfortable because he's undocumented. He doesn't have enough time to walk around and tour around. Like, he sees that there's a scene he's at coming home from work at night, and he sees this couple walking, this white couple, and they're fine. They're having this nice romantic evening, and he doesn't have that because his wife is back home in China. He is, and I can't remember. I don't know what they would call them in America, but I know in like Korea there's a term for them, and they're called I think they're called duck fathers, where like the father moves away to another country like Canada or Europe or America to work, and they send back the money to the family, to pay for everything. And like that's a very typical reality for many immigrants. Like, we move away and we're sending money back to our families back home, and like you're working so hard and so long, not only to provide for them, but to provide for yourself. And like, Lin doesn't have a life outside of work, like, so he doesn't get to take leisurely strolls at night with his wife. He's too tired. His wife is back home, and he's also very alone and isolated. He doesn't have any friends until later. There's introduction of Anna, and she's a potential friend, and that's another way that you show like how the isolation is violence as well, because it can cause depression, and so he has all of these stumbling blocks and all these things that he's coming with. And then there's this moment of violence where he's just attacked. And it came right after a moment of happiness. And I like that he fought back. I like that he didn't just get up and walk away. I'm like, no, like, beat his ass, man. Excuse me. But it was like, no, because like so many times, and I do understand what you say, where like people say, oh, you're moving to a new country, you don't want to antagonize anybody. And like, my mom told me that when I moved here, when my sister moved here, she's like, like, keep it low profile. You're going there, you're starting over, you're immigrating and everything, but you don't want to say anything to like make yourself look bad or anything. But I'm like, so I'm supposed to just accept being bullied, being racially profiled, being discriminated against. Like, there has to come a limit, and Lin had his limit. You know, he's like, I can't take this. Like, I have to react to it. So I like that you did that. So thank you, first of all, on behalf of myself. Thank you. But I want to also there's another moment I want to talk about where you kind of like juxtapose it, where you show there's moments where people like Lin who have to accept like people pushing boundaries, and then there's moments where he refused to accept it. So the moment where he kind of accepted it was late in the restaurant. It's just him and Anna, and he's just finishing his dinner, getting ready to home. And this guy comes in and he's like, I'm a regular here. They know my order and everything. And like that's a moment where Lin could have been like, no, it's late, go home. But he gives in. You know, and I kind of saw that as a juxtaposition where he is kind of like pick your battles. He was like, you know, I'm not going to make this into a thing. I'll cook the meal because it's something I can do. I can get it done in 10 minutes and it's not going to be an issue, right? Because he's thinking if this guy complains, I can get fired as well. So like there's these moments where you're showing like where he has to learn how to pick his battles, and he chose when to give in and he chose when to fight back.
It's very interesting you read it that way, and which I'm glad, because I will say that partially that's true, definitely, and but at the same, the other I guess thing that we're trying to push it here is that he is a regular and he knows him. They both know each other barely, but they see his faces a lot.
Yeah,
and, like in Asian working culture, customers are often the most correct one, and you don't really want to upset them. And but on the surface level, it's like that. But at the same time, I really want to put in, like for me, this film ultimately with all this label of racism, of COVID, pandemic, isolation, undocumented immigrant, it's ultimately about human connection for this film. And I just hope that, you know, when kindness spread out, it come back to you eventually. And here, it's both him being too nice, but at the same time, it's him trying to spread his kindness as he can. Here.
Yeah, because the same guy came back around and tried to defend him, right?
Yeah.
And then the other scene that made me that was just like, it wasn't hard for me to watch, but it just kind of showed me how since then the film is set in 2022, but we're in 2026 now, and there's something else that we're seeing that is very much about discrimination against immigrants and people of color, and that's the scene where he sees two immigration, like their vest says just immigration enforcement, I think, and he's hiding because again I'm an undocumented immigrant. These men don't know that he's undocumented, but he has that fear instilled in him, you know, because you never know what they'll do. And now we have the reality of ICE and DHS going around literally terrorizing and kidnapping people just by racially profiling them. And I want to ask you about that because the film was made a while ago, but what's it like for you seeing this reality play out in real life, you know, where these very situations where people are hiding now from the ICE and DHS, you know, these men are patrolling around like an armed militia. And that's what they are. They're an armed militia going around and terrorizing people. Like, what's that like for you, like, as a filmmaker, seeing this thing that you wrote about happening in real life?
Definitely, it's very sad and tragic in many ways. Like, I think the film was filmed in 2024. It was before Trump was elected, I think. And to see many years pass, we're going back to, you know, how it is, and it's still a long process for, I guess, immigration justice in some way. And it just also at the same time, you know, you see on the news, the due process is often ignore this and that. But at the same time, it's like everybody knows America need labor. They need blue collar laborers. Yeah, I just, you know, I just think the government should be more like logistic and justice aware about it, and not use it as weapon or media, you know, topic like to get attention, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, that's all I can say.
Yeah, no, it's a lot because I like when I like watching, because the thing is when you watch films, there's things that we say, oh, like, you know, this is fiction, you know, and like and then even if you watch things like biopics or documentaries and stuff about things in the past, You know, it's easy to watch it and kind of move on, you know, but when you're watching it and you're like, I watch the scene and I can pick up my phone literally and see like a scene like this playing out on my phone and in real life on the news, and it's just like it's very surreal. But I think this is where we can talk about like the power of film, you know, where film is a medium to show the realities of the world, which is again what you said you wanted this film, you wanted to make this film, you know, and it's about the reality of people like Lynn that are living through daily, you know, and it's about
I would just say that I'm not trying to tell any people how to sing or teach people how to sing. I'm just trying to show what it is.
yeah.
Reality, like how their life is, how they existed, and what they have to go through every day. And for people to, you know, make judgment on the film, it's already, or have a conversation about it already is my purpose. Like if they talk about it, which is good, that's already good enough for me. But you know, I cannot like teach anyone what to believe in or what to think, because with this you know, this is kind of topic, you can always have 10,000 different kind of debate. And yeah, but at least for art, for film, we provide like we give a new perspective of how reality work for everyone.
Mm-hmm. And in talking about it, talk to me a bit about working with Zhang Wang for this film, you know, because again, like, as I said, the film, he is the film, you know, like he's in every shot. This film is his performance. He makes this film. So talk to me about working with him and like the discussions you guys had about how he would portray Lynn and everything that Lynn is going through, because Lynn goes through all of these, and most of the emotions are very like they're very heavy emotions. You know, he's sad, he's depressed, he's angry, he's frustrated. He feels very alone because he's the only person there. His family is back there in China. He experiences grief, you know, from a loss of a loved one, and you know, and like he's facing also financial hardship. You know, like he has all of these very heavy emotions that he has to process, and there's the very few moments of light that he has. They're like the way how the scenes are played and the way you direct these scenes. They're like these moments are just very like they're blips. You know, they come and they go, but there are these really bright sparks of like something as simple as being understood. Like when the barista pronounces the word macchiato for him, like that made him happy. You know, when he got the free cookie, that made him happy. You know, and but then it like all kind of like dovetails from there. So talk about working with Zhang Wang and like figure and like working with him and directing like how you wanted Lin to be.
Zam's a very experienced actress in Hollywood. Asian American actors are very few to exist. So in the beginning, we have kind of hard time finding the right one, but eventually we met Zan, and I'm very lucky that he want to work with me because he was very experienced when we met. I was very young, and he actually sent back the script a couple of times. He said, "If you want me to do it, you gotta better it." And I was like, "Okay, no problem." And then you know, definitely when you have somebody who's more experience, more knowledge, and much achieving art than you listen, you want to improve, you want to learn from them. And for me, it's a process of learning with him. Definitely, like he's a very talented, very good actor. He grew up in the U.S., so he understands the good and bad part of the immigration process or immigration status. And one thing that he want to avoid in this film or any kind of work is that he told me that very clearly that it's very boring. That's why I said it's very boring to just tell the audience, "Oh yeah, he's tough. He's having a hard time." Like we don't want to see a film of being people just be sad. Like you want to see a good moment through the bad time. And I was trying my best to capture it in some way, but like right now, if I go back and rewrite a script, I can probably do it much better. But at the same time, but that did push me. You know, the good moment in the cafe, and eventually the good moment with the text from the song, and all the little help from the people. But yeah, with him, we don't really. He's one of those actors that don't really like to like. He believes in the chemistry of the set more. Like it's more organic performance, which is a new way for me to learn. I would say.
Yeah, no, and I like that I where the film ends on the with the text from the sun, it was a very hopeful ending, right? And it comes after he has a sit down conversation with Anna where she makes the gesture towards him. You know, she comes to sit down by him and peeling the potatoes, and then she gives him like the cookie, and then it's like he's finally getting people to give things from him, to give things to him instead of taking from him, right? Because for a lot of the film before, like people were taking things from him. You know, he's getting ordered around, like he's taking, like the guy came in and that's like labor, like he's taking from him, he's giving the money to the family, and you know, and finally people are giving things to him. And I like that you ended the film that way. And it's saying that one of the last questions I want to ask you is like, why the name Hand for the film? I was trying to figure out, like, I was like, Frank, where does the hand
So many people ask me this question. I'm very bad at naming scripts. But like I said, originally it's the biggest thing behind this film is connection to people. With Reach of Hand, we can avoid a lot of isolation, a lot of pain, a lot of misunderstanding. You know, people can help each other. This is so very original thinking behind it. Maybe it's very old school and boring, I guess, but but yeah, hand is a symbol. Is a symbol of human connection and hard working sacrifice that all the mountain fathers have to made and all the immigrants have to made, and also the, I guess, ironic of the violence attack, you know, and so I thought it was okay, but you know, people like my producer was like, "Are you sure you want to use this name?" I was like, "But I don't know anything, any else name to use."
Yeah, well, I think about it. I see, because it's all about either a hand in violence or a helping hand. You know, like as I said, like at the end, like people are finally giving things to him, you know, instead of taking from him. And so, like, yeah, but I was just thinking, I was like, what? But I feel you on also being terrible at naming things. When I'm writing articles or stuff, I am terrible at like coming up with a title for my pieces, and I always leave it up to the editors. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, you title this however you want to, because I can't.
Yeah, I like the one word title. I think it's cool, but at the same time, I cannot get any better. I feel like this is the art itself, you know, naming stuff.
Yeah, let me see. Like, let me see. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think some of my favorite films do kind of have like one word, like shadow, hero. Yeah, they kind of do have like one. No, Lady Bendis has more than one handle. But yeah, now that I think about it, yeah. But yeah, but I was just wondering, I was like, why hand? Because it's abstract, but it is very much to the point of the film. It's about helping hand and the things that hands can do. And so for my last question for you is now that you've had this experience of making this film, you know, and everything that's been happening in the film industry and everything, like what is something about making this film and going through the process of making it, you know, distribution, sending it to the festivals and everything, what has this film taught you about yourself as a filmmaker, and like, you know, that has really reaffirmed for you?
Oh, good question. I was just talking with a producer yesterday about it. So, and like right now, if the political climate is not a perfect timing for this film in the US, especially go to the festival circuit. But at the same time, if I didn't make it at that time, I didn't take him that long to do it, I don't know when I'm gonna do it. So it's like all part of the process. But ultimately, it's all come to what you want to make and what you think is beneficial for your career. Like this is always gonna be pulling for each other. Like what you truly want to make and what you think is good for your career. Like you can make that and earn some money and then break into industry. So yeah, like I said, also Ham is like 25 minutes and not very good for festivals and stuff. But like I said, I still want people to see how it is, how I want it to be. But you know, if it didn't go well, I can always cut another version. But you know, first try, you gotta do what I want, how I want to do it.
I know, and I really love the film as it is, and I think it will find the correct festivals, you know. And I agree. I feel like there's a lot of talk on, like, especially on social media and like the independent film circles. Like people are talking about commercialism versus, you know, artistic merit. You know, like holding on to your artistic vision. How can you do that when Hollywood is such a commercial industry? You know, it's about the business. You know, it is a business, and you want to make your art, but you're like, I also want to sell my art, you know, and I want my art to sell, and I want my art to be picked up. And it's just like it's a really fine line that filmmakers are experiencing now. And with things going on like the WB and Paramount merger and like the integration of, and like the pushing of AI into the industry, and and people, like we were discussing before, like so many people are leaving Hollywood right now, you know, like they're like, I can't do this, it's not sustainable. You know, like I was reading an article like last year. The woman was like, "I'm gonna go a beekeeper." You know, she was a production assistant, and she's like, "I'm gonna go become a beekeeper in like Arizona or something like that." You know, like so many
Yeah,
people.
I know. I was like thinking about maybe I should be a finance bro.
And but it's like we need film. You know, I think film is such an important part since the invention of film. Film has been such an important part of the human experience. You know, like I can't tell you of a single day in my life since I've been conscious that I have not watched TV. You know,
Yeah,
I can't think of it, and because it is
yeah.
such an intrinsic part of our life.
I just think the strike and the COVID, we haven't fully recovered from it. Like right now, it's I guess a period we have to go through it. Yeah, but COVID really changed, theater a lot. People still coming back, but I think people are coming back this year with all the good commercial film, which is good. But I just think film is part of our life. I cannot imagine not having it at all. Like if I have to watch TikTok video every day, I was like, no, no.
Like my mom used to call it this. My mom and my sister and everyone's mom. My mom used to call the TV the idiot box because she like, you guys will go sit in front of the TV and just stare at it for hours on end. And she'd be, I'd be calling your name and you're not answering. And she used to say, this is the idiot box. You guys sit in front of the TV and you just turn into zombies in front of the TV. But it's like that's what we learn from. You know, that's why I watch documentaries. I watch TV. I watch Sesame Street. I watch like Asian cinema. I watched National Geographic, Discovery. I watched all of these ways through the TV, you know, through film, and I that's why I love it. You know, like that's how we can learn about the world and experiences. You can read a book, but like many of us are visual creatures. You know, like we need to see the experience to really kind of like understand and literally see a different perspective of the world. And for you, like, what is the next step for you now, like as a filmmaker? What are you working on any projects now, or are you just focused on like distribution for hand?
I think distribution is pretty straightforward. You don't really do too much. You just submit and you wait and you wait and you wait, and it's a very painful process. But I think I'm getting numb to it. But anyway, I have outlined of how I would make hand into feature, but hand has taken my last 3 years, so I'm kind of putting on hold for now. I wrote a new short. I feel like I'm still one short away from feature, 10 of my craft. So I wrote another short. I'm in the developing stages right now. I think I mentioned to you before. I'm trying to find. I'm meeting like-minded producers for grants and fund for the next one, and which I think I'm kind of excited about, but probably not going to take a while. Probably going to take a while, like end of the year or beginning of next year to get it started. In the meantime, I'm just working in the commercial world or gigs here and there.
See, where you do like do you do directing for like commercials and like
I produce to make money for the most part.
Oh, what kind of projects do you producing
It's
on?
like produce like music video, commercial, brand commercial. I try and find more job in narrative right now, but as it's mostly vertical in LA, and I haven't really explored too much on the vertical one. But maybe if the circumstances is tough, I might have to explore my options. So.
Oh, you're the second director I've interviewed that is kind of like making their way through the vertical world. The other filmmaker was her name is Radha Mehta, and so I also interviewed her for her own short film, but she's working in virtual production. What's it? Vertical production as well, and that seems to be like Hollywood seems to be making a really concerted turn towards that, and which is funny because I was telling her like I have a friend Joy who watches like Chinese vertical dramas, and like
I'm
that
not
world
really
is
a big fan of
interesting.
it, to be honest with you.
Huh?
I'm not really a big fan of it, to be honest.
Get it either, but I'm like for Joy, my friend Joy loves. She's like, oh my god, that works in this vertical drama. I'm like Joy, like I'm a horizontal, like I'm like Joy, but like it seems that Hollywood, like
Joy,
Hollywood is.
Joy, please, Joy.
I'm like Joy, but she has a blast with these dramas because the plots make no sense. They're ridiculous.
It's very, it's like soap opera. It's like very soap opera in a TikTok way. Like you kind of get addicted to it.
Yeah, she'll be explaining the things, and I'm like, Joy. I'm like, we watch Korean dramas, we watch like Chinese dramas, all dramas from like all over Asia and stuff. And the vertical dramas just take the cake in being the most bonkers situations. I've seen some of them where the actors, like, it's a child, but the voice actor is a grown adult. I'm like, why does this 6-year-old sound like he's 40 years old? What are you doing?
I think it's still it's probably like a generations things, you know what I mean? Like the TikTok come in and people are like, oh yeah, this is the new way of content, but like short video, blah blah blah. But I think it's probably gonna reach the end of the hot period very soon. It's been hot.
Yeah, it's kind of a trend.
Yeah. So I think the trend's not gonna last forever. But but at the same time, they are making money. A lot of my friends are working on it. But from like for the director to make a commercial, you have to make your spec ad. It's basically short film, but a commercial version, which means you have to put in your own money, kind of do the visual, the commercial one to showcase your ability. I might do that once I save up. I will see, but right now mostly I'm just doing commercial work as a producer. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for talking with me, Benny, and much success to you, and congratulations to you and the cast and the crew for Hand.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed the film, and it was a great talking with you and everything, and getting your perspective on it, because like I'm just like, someone give Lynn a hug. I'm like, this man, I'm like, he needs a break, and he finally got his break at the end, thank goodness. But thank you so much for taking the time for talking with me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's just speaking with you. It's my honor.
Thank you.